Hey guys, welcome to another Rewind review, and today we're going to be talking about Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog was released in 2020, it was directed by Jeff Fowler and written by Pat Casey and Josh Miller. The movie stars the likes of Ben Schwartz, James Marsden, Jim Carrey, Tika, Sumpter, Adam Pally, Lee Majdoub and Neil McDonough. He was in this? Wow. Sonic the Hedgehog is based on the video game franchise that was first released in 1991. It's not a direct adaptation as such, as it's not adapting any particular stories. It's a more modern, updated rendition for 2020. Before I get started into the story and the ins and outs and everything, I should probably talk a little bit about my history with the franchise. I have been a fan of these games for a very long time. My introduction to it was Sonic Heroes, and I've been a fan ever since. I always enjoy playing those games. I always loved the adrenaline, I loved the platforming. I personally kind of prefer them over Mario. I know it's controversial, but that's just me. So when they first announced that this was going to be happening, I do remember back in maybe like 2016 or something like that, when they announced that Sony Pictures was supposed to be developing a Sonic franchise, and obviously that didn't happen, and we ended up getting a movie franchise with Paramount Pictures. If you remember rightly, back in 2019 when they first announced this movie, they started to show the trailers and posters for the movie, and we got that very infamous design where he just looked horrible. Nobody knew what they were thinking. As a fan, I was really annoyed and upset that this was what they were planning on doing, but full credit to the people who were working on the movie, especially Jeff Fowler. They all postponed the movie and they redesigned him. They got somebody who I think was part of the comics to come in and give him a bit of a redesign, and he genuinely looks so much better. It's impossible to really do this particular review without actually addressing that at some point, so I thought I'd just get it out of the way as soon as. That initial trailer, not a lot of confidence. There was one aspect of it that I was looking forward to. It wasn't something that people had a lot of faith in from the beginning, so a lot of respect to the people who did work behind the scenes to update the look, and honestly it made it so much better and it's so much more appealing, and I was one of the fans that said, look, we need to go and support this movie. So that's what happened, and I'm here to talk about it today. So Sonic the Hedgehog takes place in the character's early days, with him being transported to Earth from his own planet. The story is all about him kind of hiding, staying out of the way, until eventually one day he accidentally creates a blackout, and a lot of government officials start to become aware of his powers, so they send a character called Dr. Robotnik to go and find him, and the movie evolves into a road trip with Sonic and one of the cops from the town of Green Hills. Nice touch. Basically going on a road trip to try and find Sonic's missing rings. Generally speaking, this is definitely geared towards more of a younger audience. It is rated a PG in both the US and UK. It is definitely aimed at kids who are sort of playing the games, who are around like 10 or so, but there's a lot of stuff in here for parents and for fans to really be enjoyed. It is surprisingly a really good film. It is much better than most people were expecting it to be. So Ben Schwartz is the voice of Sonic in this, and he really nails the character. He's definitely got the energetic side to him. He's a lot playful. I like how they go into sort of explaining why he's so vocal and why he talks a lot, because as they sort of show in the movie, he is living on his own throughout the whole of his life, basically up until the events of this movie. He is really likeable, and I think what Ben Schwartz does with the character, it definitely evokes who the character is if you have played the games, but it brings it into what the movie needs him to be. He's not an annoying character, and it would have been so easy for them to have done that. They find a really good balance of having him be not only likeable but funny, and you can empathise with him as well, because you start to see that there is a lot more to him, and one of the big things that they do focus on is his loneliness. And that kind of brings me on to like one of the main themes of the movie. One of the biggest themes for this is friendship. It's all about Sonic and Tom, who's played by James Marsden, and it's all about Sonic basically connecting with people, and it is a really nice, really touching story. It's not an end of the world scenario. It does have potential to go there at times, but the biggest stakes in the movie really is just Sonic trying to escape, and that's really it. The biggest emotional thing that happens in the movie is Sonic just wanting to get a high five. It is something that you can really empathise with, and it is something that everyone of every age can relate to in some way. Tom is played by James Marsden, who most people probably know as either the Prince from Enchanted or Cyclops from the early X-Men movies. I do actually quite like the character. He's not the most fleshed out person, you know, he's got his nickname, the Donut Lord. Most of his development really is to do with more like his family and seeing how he interacts with the town and the people that everyone who he interacts with. But James Marsden is genuinely really good in the role, and I like how he interacts with Sonic. I mean, it's not the first CGI movie that he's really been a part of with, I think it was Hop. He is really good. They do have a good chemistry and they do have a good connection. It was really nice seeing how that develops over the course of the movie, and that goes for most of the supporting cast as well, because pretty much everyone in this is actually pretty good within their roles. Again, they're not as fleshed out as they potentially could have been, but it's nice having a movie like this where the main character is, you know, CG, but they don't focus too much on the humans. There's a nice balance of both the Sonic stuff and Mike. I keep saying Mike for some reason because I keep hearing Mike Wazowski every time I hear his name. For some reason I keep saying that. His wife, who's played by Tika Sumpter, she's really good as well. She's very similar to James Marsden. Like, they're both very likeable. They do have a really good connection and chemistry. They work really well in the movie, and I really like what they are able to do with their characters. And again, they aren't the most fleshed out, but they are all mostly good, and everyone does seem to be enjoying themselves doing this movie. And that goes for Neil McDonough as well. How is he in this movie? How did I forget he was even in it? He's only in the movie for like 2 minutes. He's even in the trailer and they do nothing with him. Oh well, you know, paycheck. I do like Neil McDonough, and it was pretty cool actually seeing him appear in the movie. I would have liked him to have had a bit more of a role. Maybe if any more movies come out, maybe he can come into them and he can have a bit more of a larger role, because I think he is really good and I think he would do really well within this franchise. But as I said earlier, there is one part of the marketing that pretty much from day one most people were pretty interested in, and that is Jim Carrey as Dr. Robotnik. If you're like me, you've been a fan of Jim Carrey for a really long time. I've always wanted to see him sort of go back to his more comedic roots. He's gone in a slightly more serious direction over the years with a bit more of an arty focused career. So it was great seeing that finally he was back in full comedic form. And he's a really good choice for Robotnik, or Eggman as most people are going to say. I'm of the generation where we've always called him Eggman, so if I do just call him Eggman, that's the only reason. But yeah, Dr. Robotnik's the official name. Jim Carrey is genuinely great as this role. He is having an absolute blast doing this. He's really funny. He's nailed the sinister side to him. He's very obviously evil. I mean, he doesn't hide that at all. But they do go into that a little bit. They do go into his backstory a little bit. They don't show it as such. It is him just telling, which is kind of a big no-no for a lot of screenwriters, but it's probably the only way that they could really sort of do it within this movie and keep it at this age rating and length as well. I really like how his story kind of mirrors Sonic in a way, with Sonic kind of taking his loneliness and turning it into something a bit more positive, with him wanting to be friends with people, whereas Robotnik was bullied and pushed around to the point where he wanted to kind of prove that he was better than everyone else. So there's a really nice sort of mirror contrast between the two characters. And as expected, he has some of the best lines in the movie, like with his sidekick Agent Stone, played by Lee Majdoub. And I apologise for getting your name wrong at all. I really like the relationship between the two of them, because it is the biggest comedic aspect of this movie, I feel. I mean, there are a lot of scenes with Sonic where it is more comedic, but for me, most of the funniest scenes are with Jim Carrey. Of course I want a latte. I love the way you make them! But outside that, most of the comedy is actually fairly good. It is a little hit and miss at times. Some of the visual gags are actually quite funny, like the way that Sonic disappears 1 second, heading towards San Francisco, and then suddenly he reappears and it turns out that he's fallen into the ocean and he's got seaweed and a fish on his head and all sorts. Not every single joke is going to land. I mean, as I said before, it is definitely geared towards a younger audience, so there are a lot of jokes that are more geared towards that audience. This is a film that can appeal to everyone, and there is enough comedy in there for everyone to enjoy. If you played the games at all, or if you're familiar with them, you're aware that most of the games focus on just getting from A to B. They are very action oriented, and with that I was expecting this movie to be quite an action packed movie, and it does have a good amount of action in it. Most of it's handled really well, and it is mostly chase sequences, which is kind of what I wanted to see, and they are handled really well. The biggest trick with a lot of characters, especially like Sonic and the Flash and Quicksilver, is most of the action has to try and force them into a situation where they are running, which is like most of the action sequences in this normally are chases, which again I'm absolutely fine with. That is kind of what I was expecting to happen in this movie, and I wasn't expecting just how many chase sequences are actually in it. That being said, there is one thing that always kind of bugs me a little bit when it comes to speedy characters, because they always find a way of sort of messing up the physics in a way, with they always kind of forget just how fast these characters can be. I think Sonic's something like 300 miles an hour or something like that, which they do show in the film. I would have liked it if they tried keeping him at that speed throughout the movie. That being said, there's no way of actually judging it. This is such a picky thing to get at as well, so I'm fully aware if you are saying that. But yeah, I am arguing about physics in the movie, where the main character's a blue talking hedgehog alien. That is really nitpicky, isn't it? Yeah.
Nobody cares!
But the action is handled really well, and the way that they utilise his speed effect as well, it is done well, and it is separated enough from things that we have seen in the past. I mean, we are going to get a Quicksilver style slow-mo sequence, and yes, they do one, and it's actually handled really well. It is actually pretty good, and it does stand toe-to-toe with the ones that they have for Quicksilver. Obviously the Quicksilver ones are definitely better because they were the ones that did it first, but what they did with the Sonic one, they do manage to find a way of sort of differentiating him enough so that it stands on its own 2 feet, but it is very clearly paying homage in a way to the X-Men movie. Also, there's one bit that I really do like, and that's, I'm not going to get too into spoilery territory on this one, there's not a lot really to spoil. There's a sequence where Sonic is going to a baseball game and he comes back after dark, and it's just him on his own in the field, and he starts to get a little bit upset about being alone, and he starts racing around the track, and he's getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And I really love the camera angle where it sort of pans down, and because he's moving so fast, you start to see like a version of him that's like right dead centre of the camera, moving in slow motion. You see him sort of like that, and it's just a really nicely shot scene. Now, speaking as a DC fan, I will admit that this is probably the best Flash movie we've had at this point in time. How is it that we've got a Sonic movie before a Flash? Not only that, a sequel. One of the biggest things about a lot of the Sonic games is the variety of locations, and there is a lot of different places that they do visit in this. You have the big city in San Francisco, you have Green Hills, a small town. There is a really great action sequence where Sonic is going through portals, and he keeps appearing in Paris and China and Egypt. So the use of locations is actually really well handled in this. I was hoping that we were going to see a few more locations, but I feel like that is something that they can expand in the future. I do want to see more different locations as this series progresses. Like, one that I really would love to see, again, Sonic Heroes fan here, I would love to see a seaside. I would love to see things that are reminiscent of not only that game, but things like Sonic Adventure as well. I know we are supposed to be getting like a big snowboarding sequence in the second film, so I am genuinely looking forward to seeing things like that. I wonder if they could get around to doing Planet Wisp. There are a lot of effects that they do use in this movie, and I think what they have done with not only Sonic but the robots as well, they look great. They do look quite realistic. The droids look quite realistic. They definitely have a bit of a menacing kind of edge to them, and I love the way that there's like a phases boss at one point, but they do sort of remind me a little bit of the robots that were in Sonic 06, which I actually quite like the designs of them. So it was nice to see that sort of being referenced in some way. In terms of the Sonic design, as I said earlier on, I genuinely do love what they've done with him in this. He does look better than what that original design was, and I think the effects could probably make him look a bit more realistic, but I'm actually fine with him looking a little cartoony. Sort of helps him move around a lot more better as well, because like the animators have got a bit more of a free reign of like how he'd be able to move. And also those trainers actually do look pretty good. Like they've got to sort of look marketable enough that, you know, if they are releasing them, then it'll be something that people would buy. I think that when the marketing first came out, he was wearing like these weird sort of trainer things with laces, because I don't think that they had the rights to the design originally, so that's why on the marketing he's got different footwear. Now I do have to say that I believe the animation company that worked on the original Sonic design and the new one, I do believe that they went out of business. I don't know if this is a true story. I believe it is, but unfortunately it did kind of force them out of business, so it is bad that happened. Maybe that's what all the product placement was for. You know, there's so much on the nose product placement in this. It's for the Olive Garden, is it? There's a few scenes where they sort of go out of the way to address it, because when you're there, you're a family. Part of me wonders if maybe that was added in to sort of help pay for it, but I really don't know. It just seems to sort of come out of nowhere, and I think that they could have like dialed back on it a little bit. As people who know me know, I'm a little bit of a sucker for the music that they have in a lot of the Sonic games. I was kind of curious to see what it was that they were going to be using for this movie, and they've got Tom Holkenborg, who has worked on a lot of big movies over the past few years, like Mad Max and Deadpool, so I was expecting something really good for this, and the soundtrack is actually pretty alright. It's not the most memorable soundtrack that I've heard. It's quite standard at times, but it does sound nice. It does suit the movie. I do appreciate the little jingles here and there that are reminiscent of the games. Song choices are actually quite nice as well. I do like the ones that they do use throughout the movie. I'm not a huge fan of the one that they have in the end credits, but it does sort of fit this style of the character, and I do like the ones that they do use throughout the movie, like the one where Eggman's dancing around in his truck. But I've got to be honest, I would have liked a bit of like Crush 40 or some sort of like punk rock thing, because that is what I associate with the character, and I think that's what most people kind of associate with the character, especially around about my age. Maybe in the future we'll get something along those lines. And the opening titles that I've got for these videos, I did want to actually have like a punk rock sort of style thing for it. This being a adaptation of a popular franchise, there are a lot of little Easter eggs and callbacks to a lot of different games, and I do like how they incorporate them, such as the rings, with the way that Sonic's able to use them to transport from one location to another, which is a callback to how he would sort of exit a level. And I like how one of his encounters with Eggman, there's a scene where he falls from a great height and he slams down to the floor, and then all the rings disperse around him. They even managed to incorporate the spin dash as well, with during the highway chase when he gets thrown from one of the cars and he goes into like a ball, and then he just goes and knocks one of the vehicles out. And it's just really nice seeing that they were able to incorporate as much of what we are familiar with from the games into this movie. As I said earlier, that sequence on the highway, I do like how there are phases to that device where Sonic takes one out, and then next thing you know another one pops out and you've got to take on that one, and then another one pops out, and then that's... I just like how that is reminiscent of the way that you would have phases within the video games. Also, they managed to sneak in the chili dogs as well, so that's great. Overall, this is genuinely a really good family film, and I think that kids, fans are going to really enjoy it. It is a lot more enjoyable than many people will be expecting it to be. It is a good adaptation. It does get the feel of the games down right. It is one of the better video game adaptations that we have had, and it is great seeing that we are starting to get more films like this, where they are starting to adapt games into a better version of a movie. So I can understand how, especially something like Uncharted for instance, where you are trying to condense down like this 20-30 hour game story into a little 2-hour movie, things like that just don't really work. With Sonic you definitely have a bit of leeway because you aren't too restricted by the law in a way. There are definitely things that you can borrow, and there are definitely things that you need to address at some point, and it is good how they have done that. There are definitely things that they haven't gone into just yet, and I believe they might be doing that in the sequel, so I'll be looking forward to seeing how they incorporate those into those movies. But yeah, this is a genuinely good movie. It could have been a lot better, but I think what we got was fairly enjoyable and very serviceable. It is definitely hinting at a better movie for the future, and that is something that I am looking forward to. And overall, my rating for this movie is going to be 6 out of 10. It's a fairly decent mark to give this movie, to be honest. It is genuinely good, it is really enjoyable. I think it is definitely something that families and friends and fans are definitely going to enjoy in some way, and I do think it is definitely worth checking out. So that's all I've got for today. So as always, what did you think about the movie? Did you like it? Did you not? Were you happy with the redesign? Did you want to see more adventure to it? Did you want to see more action? Did you want to see more comedy? Let me know down in the comments. If you can like and subscribe, that would be a really big help for this channel again. We're really starting to get into things a bit more here. I'm definitely feeling a bit more confident doing these. If you also want to actually keep up to date with what's been going on this channel, make sure you hit the notification button to actually keep up to date with everything. And for everyone who has been supporting, I really can't thank you enough for everything. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. See you guys.